last night it was announced that Joe Biden and Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy reached an agreement to raise the debt ceiling before a potential default on the June 5th deadline could plunge the United States and the global economy into chaos. Now, the vote to approve the plan is set for Wednesday, and while Biden and McCarthy are projecting optimism about it, it remains to be seen whether enough Democrats and or Republicans will sign on. Because the Democrats, some of them have their hard lines, which we know they'll probably cave if Biden tells them to. But these Freedom Caucus Republicans, who already kind of put McCarthy on notice by dragging him through 15 rounds of a speaker vote back in January when they had their own sort of force the vote saga there, they are insisting that they're not budging on certain issues. So CNBC outlined the sort of key components of the negotiations, which we will just sort of go through little by little here. These are points that they generally agree on, which are energy and mining permitting reform. Obviously, Democrats want more green permits. Republicans want more fossil fuel permits. But obviously, Biden is Mr. Willow Project, Mr. Inflation Reduction Act, the so-called climate bill, which opened up 600 million acres of ocean to drilling. And so, you know, they won't have really much of a problem coming to some sort of agreement on that. And then rescind unused COVID-19 funds. Between 2020 and 2022, Congress authorized approximately $4.6 trillion to help the U.S. respond to the pandemic. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that about $30 billion of that money has not been earmarked and could be clawed back in order to create savings. I mean, what comical. I mean, just absolutely comic $30 billion. I mean, just it's just what a ridiculous country.
That's like rolling the drunk that is the USA.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what a ridiculous country.
You're shaking the country by the ankles to see what change falls out of its pockets.
Exactly. Now, here are some stickier points here. New work requirements for Medicaid. The Republican debt limit bill passed by the House in April would require able-bodied adults with no children to work or train in order to stay on Medicaid, the federal health insurance for low-income people. The White House rejected this proposal. I'm not going to accept any work requirements that's going to impact on medical health needs of people, Biden said earlier this month. Well, one health need of people.
That's very qualified answer.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, one health need of people, maybe not medical per se, but is food. And this one changes to current work requirements for food stamps. This one seems to be in the bill that Biden and McCarthy are calling it a good deal. So unlike the Medicaid demands, it appears there could be some room for compromise on GOP proposals to raise the work retirement age, right? So Biden said no to the Medicaid provision, excuse me, but expressed openness to this one. Let me see where I am here. It appears there could be some room for compromise on GOP proposals to raise the work requirement age window for people enrolled in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, from 50 to 55 years old. The same day Biden rejected the Medicaid work requirements, he also noted that he supported work requirements in the 1990s and said it's possible there could be a few others he would support, but not anything of any consequence. So it seems like they are looking at capping SNAP and putting in work requirements for SNAP recipients for people 54 and under with no children. Now, you look at the Medicaid pitch, you look at the food stamp pitch, that provision there, well, we're only going to cap benefits for people with no children. That exposes a certain absurdity of the system, because the reason why they couldn't penalize people with kids is because a lot of times work requirements are impossible to meet if you have children, because guess what? We don't have child care in this country.
Child care, yeah.
So a lot of people are on Medicaid in the first place because they can't make enough money to support their family because they can't put their kid somewhere 6 hours a day for less than $2,000 a month, at which point everything they earn would just be paying for the child care, and it would make no sense. There's no market sense to any of this. Even if you are a market conservative, even if you are a market capitalist, there is no market incentive for someone with kids to work 40 hours a week for $17 an hour when it costs a couple $1,000s a month to put their kids in a place that allows them to work. What you're telling people, if they have kids, is you have to just endure work to pay for the child care in order for the government to give you access to medicine or food. But there's no actual market incentive for you to work. You're just working for the medicine, for the food, and for the child care that you wouldn't have to work for if we just gave people child care. If you gave people child care, you'd have few people needing Medicaid or food stamps in the first place. If you had free child care, a lot of people wouldn't be in the situation where they needed any of these things. But we do have that. It's just such an absurd system. And this speaks to the failure of the Progressive Caucus for not forcing universal pre-K through the House when they had the chance, because so many of these questions, these two especially, would not be issues to the extent that they are. There would still be an issue in some cases, but these issues would be vastly solved if you had something as simple as universal childcare. And you don't. Even in New York State, you don't. They say we have universal pre-K here. We don't have no fucking universal pre-K here. We have a universal pre-K lottery. I know because I entered it. I entered my kids in it. They have free pre-K, but it's a lottery system.
Well, that's why, when you would see the PMCs with such contempt for the people during COVID who wanted the schools back open, well, you can work from home, motherfucker.
Right, exactly.
These people can't. What is somebody whose job was in a supermarket, which didn't close, it was considered essential? What the fuck were those people supposed to do? They couldn't quit, or they wouldn't get the unemployment. Right? They were in a business that didn't close, and the schools were closed. Did you ever spare a moment to I never, ever saw any of these news segments talk about that. I saw them gin up outrage. These people want the schools open. They're so ignorant. These MAGA people. Never did I see them ever discuss, wow, there are poor people who this really puts in a hard spot. All those people were just ignorant.
Well, because you don't have an infrastructure. You need an infrastructure. Even if you're going to have a market-based economy, this is, I don't want to say it's the libertarian fantasy, because we've talked to Larry Sharp last week. I don't know where he stands on this. I don't want to lump all people into a certain ideology, but, you need an infrastructure. Even if you're going to have capitalism, which I don't think you should have, obviously, but you need an infrastructure. You need a system built out for that to exist in. You cannot have an economy with no childcare, with no place for people to put children.
You need some kind of infrastructure to support it. This is what happens when you don't treat capitalism, setting aside whether it's the best economic system or not. It certainly can't function if you treat it not as a tool for the betterment of society and for the running of society. When you treat it as a fundamentalist religion,
right,
this is what you end up with, because religion by its nature is faith-based. It's not rational. The idea that more capitalism is always the solution leads to self-contradictory situations like this. You want people working. You don't want people dependent on the government. But you're setting the playing field in such a way that they can't go to work because you are so ideologically committed to the idea that the government should provide nothing to people. And yet that's why they can't go to work. It's one or the other. You need to make a decision. You need to make a choice of which of these things you value more.
Right. Of course. So here are some core demands from Chip Roy. Chip Roy was one of the Freedom Caucus members who held out and put Kevin McCarthy through, I think it was 15 rounds of votes before naming him Speaker for the GOP. He made some red lines of his known. Repeal the electric vehicle tax credits sent through Biden's renewable energy agenda, which were passed last year in the IRA.
Problem solved.
Yeah, repeal $80 billion in additional Internal Revenue Service funding, also part of the IRA. Well, I would actually go for that one. Overturn Biden's executive action to forgive approximately $315 billion worth of student loan debt. I'll get to that in a second. The Supreme Court will decide the fate of Biden's plan in the coming weeks and enact the REINS Act, which would require regulatory agencies such as the Federal Trade Commission and the EPA to get congressional approval before they could issue major rules. Now, McCarthy, in an effort to sort of make it look like he's coming through for the Freedom Caucus more than perhaps he is, he touted the student loan payment pause expiration, if you will.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it's bullshit they were doing.
Right. As part of the debt ceiling progress, which is total bullshit, because Biden announced that payment pause was expiring long before they came out and said they had a deal. He's just trying to look for something that he can go to these like real holdouts and say, look, we got this, when really you didn't get that. That wasn't part of the negotiation. And I think most people know that. As for student loan debt forgiveness, well, that's in the court's hands. I mean, there's nothing they could really do about that. Now, that was an executive order to begin with, so I don't know why he thought that they could legislate that out of existence. It wasn't legislated into existence. I guess they can pass a law overriding it, I guess, if they wanted to. But that's almost certain to get struck down. But here, obviously, you have McCarthy trying to win over some of the more sort of right-wing fringe elements of his party by acting as if the student loan payment pause expiration is somehow a win for the Republicans as part of these debt ceiling negotiations, which I don't know how much they will buy that. But as we stand right now, Wednesday is the big day. So by our Thursday show, we should have some big news to talk about one way or another, because that's going to be almost their last chance. I mean, Thursday is the 1st of June. And so the expiration is the 5th of June, which would be Monday. So the hour is getting late.
Stock up on your guns.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And canned beans.
Soylent Green.
Yeah.
It's made out of people.
Yeah.
That's going to be us next year.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I would not be against repealing that extra funding for the IRS, because they're not going to put that to any good use.
Yeah, no, that I would give them that one. But I did want to play this, actually, because this is relevant. We're talking about we need to trim $30 billion here. We need to cut the electric car credits. We need to restart student debt payments and things like that. As we're talking about an austerity agenda coming down the pike, which it's going to be one way or the second, it doesn't matter. Obviously, they're going to make significant cuts. There's no way they can't make significant cuts. That's not Biden being, oh, I wish I didn't have to do it. This is the game they play. Joe Biden, Bill Clinton, all these guys, they love to work with Republicans to cut social programs. That's what they love to do. They love being able to do that. They love, losing the midterms, too bad. Oh, that sucks. I guess we're going to have to, we have no choice. Now the Republicans hold the cards. Now we're going to have to cut welfare, right? We're going to have to cut Medicaid. We're going to have to cut food stamps. We're going to have to put work requirements. Yeah.
Because that's what the American people want.
That's what they want. That's what they want.
That's what you would think if you read Newsweek or the New York Times or the Washington Post. Everything is framed that way.
Yeah.
The Democrats went too far, and they went too far left, and they alienated a lot of their voting base, and now they're coming back to the sensible middle. Meanwhile, if you look at polling, neither of these parties is anywhere within sight of the island of median opinion. They're not even in that ocean of what people act. Neither of them.
As we're looking for $5 billion to cut here, $10 billion to cut here, $20 billion to cut here, here's Lindsey Graham in Ukraine this week telling Zelensky that the money we're giving him is the best money we've ever spent.
Free or die.
Now you are free.
Yes.
And we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
It's the best money we've ever spent. Thank you so much.
No,
That's the best money we've ever spent. Not money on medicine for our people, food assistance for our poor people, not money on environmental initiatives. No, money we're giving you guys to kill the Russians. That's the best we've ever spent. To issue a quote like that as these negotiations are coming down the pike, as we are literally screaming that we have to cut food stamp benefits. I mean, it's just, like I said, this is what we've been saying for a while. There's no saving this country. There's no turning this around. There's no righting this ship. That an elected official can go to a foreign country and say that the $170 billion we have just given you to accelerate World War III, that's the best money we've ever spent, as the very week we're talking about taking food off our own people's plates and medicine out of our own people's cabinets. If you can get away with saying that, then you don't have a country anymore. You don't have any functioning democratic system anymore. It is gone. The plane is crashing into the mountain. The question is, how do you survive that impact, and can you build something new out of the ruins of that? There is no righting this ship, obviously.
Well, that's why I keep saying that there is this faction of left intellectuals that are way ahead of where the left is in preparing for the world after. Because they are already, I'm talking that whole J.D. Vance crew,
right?
The Steve Bannon crew. They're kind of, Steve Bannon is really the godfather of these new right intellectuals. They're planning for the world after. Like as far as they're concerned, this is just the empire wrapping up, right? Like this is done. So how do we seize the moment? Right. And their solutions are crazy. It's monarchy. You have monarchists. Who knew that there are monarchists?
Right.
I would not have thought that's an idea anyone would seriously consider today. But there's no real equivalent left.
Please clap.